Okay, a little bit more about Homer. This should be the 71st day second video. And your notes, so you should be in the 18th section, page 18 point whatever. Soon, maybe tomorrow, I'll try to sort out your notes again of how they should look. If you choose to read, a couple things here. If you choose to read the Odyssey or the Iliad, I recommend that you read it as a poem. There are always translations, but there are translations in prose that looks like you're reading a novel. I wouldn't do that. I would read it as a poem. The copy that I had yesterday of the Iliad, I thought was a really good translation. I mean, take your pick. And the poetry doesn't rhyme. I should warn you about that. I mean, when I say about these epic singers singing poetry, the rules for poetry didn't include rhyme, but it did include meter, and I'll talk more about that later. But in some form or other, I try to get it as a poem. Another thing that I don't know if I pointed out is that these should be regarded as the record of an oral performance. When you read it, eventually somebody wrote it down, and it's a record of what was an oral performance. I liken it to this class in a way. This is an oral performance that I'm making. And I'm leaving a record. I mean, the huge difference, of course, is I'm not an epic singer. I'm not a singer of tales. I'm not presenting this as a poem. I don't have a harp, and I'm not singing these stories. But in some ways it's similar, because I would feel badly, or I do feel badly, if I think I've made something up. I'm not trying to make anything up here. I'm trying to give a record of what I think is true about our culture. So, you know, in a way, if I were doing this as one huge song, it's hard to imagine. But anyway, enough on that. Here's the version that you want to see. I think if you decide you want to see it as a movie, it's a pretty new movie. It's been made into several movies, the Odyssey. There's the one you want to find, and Armand Assant, I don't know actually how to say his name, but if you look for it and you look for his name, you'll find it. I'm sure lots of sections of it are on YouTube, but I didn't look. All right, the Odyssey, it deals with Odysseus. He's the main character. He has to get, the Trojan War's over. He's been gone for 10 years. And now he heads back, but he does something to offend the god of the sea, I think it is, Poseidon, a big mistake if you're about to set sail. And he is blown away off course. He doesn't know where he is. He goes all over the place trying to make it home. I think Syracuse is his home. I didn't write that down, but I think that I get some of those cities mixed up. But I think that's the name of his home. And it's 10 more years before he finally gets home. He's gone a total of 20 years. His Roman name is Ulysses. So, I know at one point, I think the movie was done, or a booklet, is The Adventures of Ulysses. I mean, that's fine. Of all the adventures that he has, see, it's there. This even makes a cartoon. I think I saw a DuckTales version of this. I'm sure I did at one point, because there are all these monsters and all these adventures. The Cyclops with the single eye. If you can remember Borachio in Much Ado About Nothing, his mask was that of a Cyclops. In a cave. Yeah, it's tempting to tell you these stories, but I don't think I will. They're easily enough found. Circe, or Kirke, I don't know how you say it, she was a witch, fell in love with Odysseus and changed his men into pigs, and wouldn't change them back, so he had to stay there to be true to his men. That's interesting. And I'd like to point out that the movie Willow that I talked about earlier in the year, if you would ever see all of Willow, there's an allusion to this at one point where the evil Queen Bavmorda uses her magic, and she turns the army that Willow is with, turns them into pigs. Well, that's Circe. The Lotus-Eaters, the land of the Lotus-Eaters. Well, everyone falls asleep there. When they eat that, they fall asleep, and Odysseus has to use toothpicks or chips of wood to hold his eyes open to carry his men out into the boats and push them back off the shore, because he's got to get them away from that smell, a sweet smell of the lotus flowers. Now, when he gets home, really, I think the best part, or the most influential part, compelling part of the whole thing, I think, is when he gets home. Penelope is his wife. She has been true to him. But there are all these suitors that are convinced he's never coming home, and they want to marry her. They want his wealth. And they insist, it's been 20 years, it's time you marry again, you have to marry. And she even does something like tricks, like she's weaving something. Says, when I finish this weaving, I'll marry. And at night she undoes what she did the day before. They see her weaving all the time. So she's holding the line, and Telemachus is Odysseus' son. And he comes home too. And when Odysseus gets there, he doesn't dare just show up because these suitors are liable to all attack him and kill him. And he doesn't have a weapon. He's lost all of his crew. This is a pretty good story. So he has to end up with his bow, and he does so. He's able to string his bow. He's able to make a shot that none of the others could make. And then he and Telemachus go to town and kill all these suitors. This is very well shown in that movie. The one thing I want to say about that, though, later on, I'm going to tell you, or soon, I'm going to tell you about Freud. And Freud used a Greek story of Oedipus and came up with the Oedipus Complex. Well, because of this Greek story. I've recently thought that I could imagine there could be something called an Odious Complex. Because the idea of being away for 20 years and then coming back, and it not being that easy to regain your power. I feel like I lived through that and I think a lot of guys do, when they retire. I retired. I've been teaching for, 30 years more. But now I'm here all the time on the farm. And it hasn't been that easy on anybody. How to deal with that. And they say, some guys, they don't survive retirement. I think it's a stress. It should be a joy. And it is. But, and I also think about maybe there should be a Penelope Complex too. Because although in the Greek story, Penelope is this perfect wife who's just waited, and there she is, and she's ready to support. I think it's hard there too. So in the Odyssey, it's a physical journey, but in the journey of life, when you come to retirement, I don't know. I'm making this up. I never heard it any other place. But if I had to give it a name, and from now on, I think I'm going to give it my own name. I'm going to say, watch out for the Odysseus Complex, or the Penelope Complex. Don't be surprised if you run into it. Okay, Ulysses Gold is a modern-day movie about Ulysses Gold is a kind of honey set in Florida. It's an adaptation of the Odyssey. I don't necessarily recommend it, but Ulysses. I even think his wife might be Penelope. It might be her name. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? A very popular movie. That claims to be inspired by the Odyssey. I don't see that it's, here and there's things about the Odyssey, and it's a wonderful movie. Oh, make no mistake there. And certainly the. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you about the sirens. Those women that sang and they lured the sailors to their death, and Odysseus wanted to hear him, so he had himself tied to a post or tied to the mast. And well, anyway, that's cleverly in there. These women that are washing their clothes down by the river. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou is a good movie. It's a fun movie, and it's related to it. You'll see the Cyclops in there. And then any really long, difficult journey is sometimes called an Odyssey. Space Odyssey was a movie. I'm thinking about making a sort of an Odyssey of my own at the end of this course in May, toward the end of May, and it would be a linguistic Odyssey. I'm thinking very seriously about, by myself, traveling to Europe and traveling all the way from Hamburg, Germany, all the way down to Portugal and back, and going through, and one of the reasons I want to do it is I could go through 9 different language communities And I'll tell you more about that, but later, if I do it, or even if I don't, I'll maybe tell you more about it. But anyway, that would be a long and difficult journey, and I'm a little worried about it. Should I really do it? And so I've begun to think of it as an Odyssey. Okay, I think that takes care of this for today. We'll see you tomorrow.